Module 5 is called The Four Wounds of Trauma and the Three Whys of Addiction. I did a video on this, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, just before the holidays, I think. You can watch the whole thing. It's about 40 minutes long. I'll speak to it quickly here. So I'm just going to read this quickly. Addiction is the opposite of belonging. First, addiction separates you from your anxiety, then from your pain, then from your family, then from the few remaining friends that have held on as long as they could. And finally, addiction can separate you from yourself. Addiction and trauma are two sides of the same coin in a way. When we go into this module, we want to redefine trauma. And I'm sure you may have heard this, but just to repeat as an important truth, trauma isn't really mostly about the event that happened. It's about what happened after and up until this breath. Because until we can resolve animistically, somatically, in the left brain, in the right brain, in the center of the heart, in connection to souls, if that's a part of how you live in the world, we're not attending to what trauma really becomes, which is a formative experience. And sometimes I use the metaphor of a Nerf ball or a spongy ball covered in tinfoil, and everything that crunches us and squishes us and pushes us and twists us crinkles up that tinfoil in a way. And that holds the spongy, loose, free-flowing vitality that we have as our birthright. So if we're all kind of crunched up, and I know I felt that way at different times, until we have ways to smooth things out and give that teddy bear or foam ball or something a chance to fulfill its natural, innate form, we're in trauma. And it's contorting not only our somatic experience, but how we exist and how we see ourselves as a self. And I hope that makes as much sense as it's meant to. Most people, by the way, my name is Dr. Michael Smith. I've been in practice 30 years, and for most of that time I've also been teaching clinicians. And I can say from that volume of experience, whatever that might mean, at least 80% of the chronic illness patients that I've seen are experiencing some volume of distress and trauma. And that aspect of chronic distress is driving most of the processes behind chronic illness. So very quickly, the four wounds of trauma are hypervigilance. I've just been hurt. I want to make sure I don't get hurt again. If I've been feeling hypervigilant long enough, I'm nervous all over the time, looking for the next thing that's going to hurt me. I might start self-soothing and or comfort-seeking and or beginning the, very, very dangerous dance of addiction. If I keep doing that for a long time, again, I'm going to start losing connection socially. I'm going to start maybe losing capacity for work or for creativity or for other things that are really important. And this creates a kind of social disorientation. And because we're coming, if we're the one going through this, crumpled up with our tinfoil, we want to make the pain go away. The people around us don't understand why we're becoming that person now. And then there's a sense of loss of trust. And sometimes that feels like it's other people don't trust us. And sometimes that feels more like we don't trust other people. And once we live in that place for a while, and if I'm not asking anyone to put up their hands, but if you've ever been in that place, usually the next thing that happens is the fourth wound of trauma, where we lose a sense of self-trust, or even a sense of trust in the experience of trusting anything, even reality. And that's often when we end up in a gripping kind of existential pain. And when we go into addiction at that point, we're often pretty hell-bent on self-destruction. When we look at addiction as a property of life, we all have our phones now, and we all have excessive processed foods that are designed to make us want more of them. The three whys of addiction ask us to recognize the first step of addiction is self-medication. I know that might sound like making an excuse, but it's not. It's recognizing, oh, I need to calm down, I need to sleep, I need something, and I'm trying to meet a need. And that's usually where addiction starts, is I need to self-medicate. The second way of addiction asks us to ask ourselves really why we need to change our trajectory, because we can see at some point we're going to crash, and we can see how much more damage we're going to do to the people around us and ourselves. Now, that's not coming from shame and judgment and, do good or you're bad. It's more of getting really honest that we actually need help. We need healing. We started with self-medication. It didn't work because now we're really noticing that our life is on a pretty slippery slope. And having been through that slippery slope myself, until I actually recognized that I needed help and started asking for it, that was just the way life felt. But as soon as I said, well, I need another why, and another why is why we actually want our lives to be full of beauty, full of connection, full of creativity, full of amazing experiences, not just a closed, suppressed, self-annihilating place to be. And as we make that trajectory between self-medication to why and how can I stop going in this direction, and why, can I actually identify with my goals and bigger truths to aspire to, until we're making that transition, quite often we can't really accept ourselves or love ourselves. And this is a tricky thing to bring up, so maybe trigger warning. If we're using substances to suppress trauma, we're often using substances to suppress memories that are latent. So when we start getting through that pendulum of self-medication to self-destruction to self-care and support and going to meetings or seeing therapists, getting acupuncture, everything like that, we start getting better. Strangely enough, that's when the memories come back, and then sometimes we fall back into these patterns and swing back out of them a couple of times. And then we can accept ourselves and those memories, and that we still want our lives to be as beautiful as possible. And that process can take a couple of years sometimes. But knowing how that process happens, and that it is a process, hopefully gives us all confidence that if we can be consistent and move in those ways, then we'll get where we're going. The closing circle in Module 5 is called Walking in a Good Way. And it just describes the indigenous perspective from both people I'm related to and the early Taoist practices, the indigenous people of China, how they saw moving through life. And it's almost the opposite of how Western society works. So it's hard for us sometimes to move in those directions when everything we see around us is going the other way. So that sometimes is also a very powerful conversation to have.